Hello, everybody. Enjoying the beat, the music to the sound of the opener. Today is the second episode of the SME Playbook webinar hosted by Ariel and by Foundation. I'm your host for today. My name is Timidayo Adebayo, and the founder and managing partner of Buy Capital and Buy Foundation. Now, the topic right in front of us today is sustainability. We're targeting sustainability simplified, and we have a very host of fantastic panels to help us set up an eye level 5 foot conversation on what we, based on our experience, exposure, think about sustainability and how does that translate into our day-to-day life as an entrepreneur and as a continent. And join me. I believe we'll try to make it interesting and a conversation for everybody to participate as much as possible. If you have questions, we are live on all the platforms, and wake up your friends, text your colleagues. Let's join this conversation together, and let's try to understand how we can simplify the word sustainability. And, like we'll say, the word sustainability is a widely used word in many impact-driven statements these days. We, even at Buying, we also use the word sustainability in our introduction. But that word sustainability means different meanings. It's defined, is explained, is expressed in different meanings to many people in many different ways of life. Today, our panelists will be talking about how sustainability is, what it means to them personally, and how it has translated to their day-to-day life and how that has shaped what they view sustainability is and how we could make that work for the African market. Now, I'll be bringing in the panelists to introduce themselves. On the panel today, we have Mercy Zulu. Mercy Zulu, you man. Mercy, you are on the hot seat today. Could you please give us a brief introduction of yourself and in 2 minutes? Thank you.
Thanks, Temi Dio. Great to be here. Great to share. This is a favorite topic of mine. So I am an investment and ESG professional with experience in angel investing, venture capital, and sustainable finance. I spent the last 5 to 6 years working for an impact investment firm, looking at both technology and brick and mortar companies, sustainable businesses. And I now work with CG IAR doing the same work, but focused on the agriculture sector. So I wear 2 hats, the investment side and the ESG side. Very enthusiastic about entrepreneurship, especially as it relates to the African continent. And I've had the privilege of being in circles and in forums that promote sustainable finance and impact investment. For example, I'm part of the task force that set up the National Advisory Board for Impact Investing in Zambia. So very happy to be here with the rest of the panelists and talk about my favorite topic.
Wonderful. Well, we have a host of topics and discussions to go by for everyone. Next on the panel is Janine Brassi. If she's on, let's bring her on board. Yes, you're on the hot seat again, so please introduce yourself to the rest of the team and to our audience who are eager to learn from every one of us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Sustainability, wonderful topic. We've got no businesses if it doesn't start with that one simple interaction of a customer handing over some money for value that you've added. So my business, Acro South Africa, we work with tech startups, mostly with Acro. We do from early stage, just really simple from ideation, helping them get through to accelerators, prepare themselves for the acceleration process, really get their businesses going, through to people looking for funding for Series A and Series B. We work with tech startups across Africa and more diaspora who have left the continent and love to come back because there's a sense of trust and knowing how the community works in Africa. And then my second business is Girl Boss Hustle, where we have a membership where we help women in entrepreneurship. It's not tech focused, it's anyone. So that's my play in the space. And, obviously funding is integral to everything we do for the startups.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And finally, last but not the least, we have a gentleman in the mix to make it balanced. So, we have, we are gender balanced, and inclusion, it's gender balanced. So it's 2 versus 2, right? Not 2 against it. We have David Deal. If he's on in, let's bring him on board. David, you're on the hot seat. Please introduce yourself to the rest of the crew.
Hi, thank you, Temidayo, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today. What to say? I'm passionate about environment and society around the world. I come from 5-6 years of experience between Asia, Australia, Northern Europe, and now I'm currently in the Gulf region. And I'm here today to bring a bit of the experience from the Gulf region, the MENA region, and the Middle East, and to learn more about the African continent for you guys that are on the ground there. So that's also an opportunity for me. And I'm currently working as a sustainability advisor and ESG advisor, investing in at Sustainable Square. We are sustainability focused and social impact focused consultancy firm based in Dubai, but active in India, Africa, and etc. So I hope I can bring a bit of experience here and a bit of knowledge to simplify sustainability, as this webinar is about, and thriving, not surviving, as you said.
Yes, thriving, not surviving. Now, the word thriving, not surviving, it's literally a core definition of what sustainability means. And in a few phrase, like I mentioned earlier, sustainability means multiple different things to multiple different people. Now, Mercy, what does that word sustainability means to you?
Thank you, Temidayo. For me, sustainability is simply making money doing good. So pursuing both profit and purpose. I don't believe the two are mutually exclusive. You can't positively impact the environment or people sustainably and preserve that impact for generations without having the financial side, the financial stability side. So you can't grow and reach more people and positively impact their lives without being financially stable. So for me, and with my experience, the definition for sustainability for me is combining both the profit and the purpose side.
Fantastic. I'll take that word, making money doing good. That's what sustainability means to Mercy, and I believe to most of us. So, Mr. David, what does that mean? Sustainability. What does it mean to you?
But today I want to bring the business aspect, right? We're here talking to SMEs, to corporates. So if we need to move from the definition of sustainable development from the Brundtland report, right? I believe everyone in the field is familiar with that. So preserving the natural resource for the next generation, or the next generation to come. I want to say this from a business perspective. Like, we want to be sustainable today so that the next generation can take over the business of today and still thrive in the future. So that's my definition of sustainability when I need to go into the business side. And I want to see that way, like the long-term sustainability, so that my son, my grandson can actually take over and still thrive in that situation. If it can be in a nutshell like this.
So in a nutshell, sustainability means succession planning. Succession of businesses, generational businesses, successions, and we have a host of many global companies that have been 100 years, that have been 120 years, that have celebrated decades of existence, from passed on from father to son, from mother to daughter, across the world. Thank you very much for that, for that definition, David. And last but not least, Jenny, what does that word sustainability mean to you?
Thank you. So obviously I totally agree with Mercy, and I see the importance of all of us as global citizens ensuring that there's a future for our world resources. Like David, certainly in the African context, there's been difficulties in terms of growth and succession. But from my personal point of view, it's actually about the sustainability of the founder in his business. In entrepreneurship, so that there is a long-term play for his business. He can help himself, he can help his family, or she can help herself and her family. And in so doing, the ripple effect out. So for me, it really starts with the before, during, and after. The education process before going into entrepreneurship, the process into entrepreneurship, and then after, the ongoing support that's needed.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now we've had the what audiences. If you could go to the comment section and tell us what the sustainability means to you. What do you define your own sustainability practice? Let us know your thoughts about the word sustainability. And now that we've established what the word sustainability means to us, I would like to ask our panelists a few questions. And as we may, and I'll call it each other. As I'll shove it around just to make it interactive and to enjoy ourselves. Now, the first question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to point this to Janine, and because just to follow on what she just said. What is your experience dealing with small businesses in Africa? And based on that experience, how would you describe their knowledge on the concept of the type of sustainability you and your firm, which you represent, are looking for?
Thank you. So, I deal with kind of two ends of the market in terms of entrepreneurship. The very, very early stage, from ideation and seed stage through to Series A and B. So it's almost two extremes: the beginning and then into the real growth. And for the most part, I think certainly the UN Sustainability and Development Goals haven't been front and center of the agenda for the startups themselves, but it's becoming more and more important as our ecosystem gets more mature, more sophisticated. We're understanding that the VCs, the angel investors and the VCs, are taking the UN goals seriously. And in fact, at the moment, we're doing a pitch competition for the University of Cape Town students, and we've actually brought that in terms of their pitch, that they address this. So it's certainly starting to come in front and center, and it's interesting. It's been pulled not by the startups, but by the funding that's available. So frankly, from an early stage startup's point of view in Africa, the context is about survival. Am I going to get to the next month? It's about short-term sustainability, self-sustainability. We don't. When we start from the basics and the real intention, it's about, how do I start a business? How do I get going? How do I survive another day? It's very simplistic. Investors are, of course, looking for a long-term sustainability, and therefore the startups and the VCs have not been aligned. But that is changing. It's very clear. The very fact that one of my pitch coach, I brought him in, and he brought it in as an agenda. It wasn't on the agenda for the pitch coaching last year. So I think that shows that we're in a flux and a change. But yeah, frankly, in Africa, it's about sustainability, and that's why funding is so important.
Wonderful. Now, in reaction to that, Messi, can you share what in reacting to that question as well, and listen to what Jenny has mentioned in regards to short-term struggle which these SMEs have faced, and what do you see in your line of business, and how based on the experiences and the SMEs and the small businesses, or that within your portfolio and the ones you've seen, how would you react to this?
So just coming in from the investor side, and specifically the impact investor side, a lot of my work has been around the funding aspect, and then really hands-on helping these SMEs and startups navigate growing pains. And if there are entrepreneurs in the room, what those growing pains are: everything from commercial strategy to talent retention and fundraising and developing ESG systems. So from that perspective, I think interacting with entrepreneurs from that perspective, I think most African entrepreneurs are familiar with the concept of profit with purpose, and have been able to attract investment from responsible investors and impact investors from over the years from that perspective. However, I do think that the depth of that knowledge varies when it comes to the purpose bit. And when you look at ESG, and for those who are not familiar with the term ESG, it simply means environmental, social, and governance. So I think the S part, the social part, positively impacting people through products and services, and the governance part, the G part, are relatively well known by African entrepreneurs. go to pitching competitions, and part of the pitch you do hear entrepreneurs saying, you know, we're trying to democratize finance for informal retailers, or we're targeting the bottom of the pyramid, or we're trying to lift farmers out of poverty. So I do think they recognize the S part, especially because it strongly relates to the business performance part. You know, sometimes in some cases, you know, social metrics do double as financial metrics in terms of reaching more people, in terms of protecting customers through your products and services. If you're not in line or tuned into creating a product that is a responsible product, then, you know, your customers won't be loyal. So all those things are kind of intertwined with business operations. And then on the governance side, of course, governance is at the foot of it all, you know, in terms of operations. So I do think they are well-versed, relatively well-versed with that. What I do find is the E part, especially on the African continent, is not well known for many entrepreneurs. So the environmental part. And in my experience, it's not usually an explicit focus of business models. You hear, like I said, entrepreneurs pitching about, you know, changing people's lives, impacting people, but not so much about the E part. And I think it's largely because of not really having a clear understanding of it and how, you know, business models could enable it and what benefit, you know, they have from making the environmental side a very explicit focus. So S and E, relatively well understood. E needs a little bit of work with entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much for that, Messi. Now, I'm going to I want David to react to this in regards to the context of a cooperation in the market that you operate in. Now, Messi mentioned the fact that the E part of the ESG part is missing, or the knowledge. There's a huge knowledge base to be done on the environmental side. Now, climate change is on the horizon. There's food, there's food shortage. We need food. All those things are coming in. So understanding the E part would allow entrepreneurs to be able to think innovatively about their business and how to make it sustainable on the long run. Now, David, on the corporate side, based on where you stand, now putting what Messi and Jenny has mentioned together, you know, are you seeing the same thing in your context in the corporate society within the market in which you operate?
So it's a really interesting point. So I want to start with the Janine performance on the investors, no, and how this is changing. Like, it's not anymore driven by the entrepreneurship, but there is an interest from people that are sitting on the cash to actually put those cash where they can have an impact, right? And this is something that I believe is changing in the last years. So this is where the trend is completely like transforming the market. And then at the same time, what Mercy mentioned, like with governance and social aspect, I believe that's where the sustainability, like the sustainability that we bring with us from the past is, like, you need a strong governance for your business to be sustainable and to stay in the market. And you need to be responsible towards your employees and towards the community to make sure that you have that social license to operate. You don't create like issues within the community, so your business can still go. But then the interesting point, and where my passion as a human being lies also, is that the fact that the environmental aspect of, so the E of the ESG, actually brings up opportunity for business to grow. Like today, renewable energy, like trying to find a solution for water scarcity, or like all those environmental related issues, or food security at the same time, that is a social issue but can be targeted through environmental aspect. It's something that offer opportunities for entrepreneurship and offer opportunities for SMEs to target certain like specific issues and be supported by corporate that can, or by investors that can see opportunity in that side. So I'm really looking at the E part in a strong way for the future. And I mean, it's all over. Climate change, we know it's reality today. It's not anymore a talk of some university researcher. So it's something that needs to be on the ground, and we need to address it.
Thank you. Now, sustainability, climate change is a reality. You know, David just mentioned it. You know, it's not a fairy tale. It's right next to, you know, we've seen so much rainfalls in the West and across different part of Africa. We see what's going on in Haiti. Climate change is a reality, and it needs to be in the sustainability practice, especially on the E part, as Mercy has mentioned, and as David has defined, and as Jadine has spoken about, needs to be part of how we think as an entrepreneur. Now, in redirecting, leveraging on that word that you mentioned, social license. Now, social license I would lead to my next question, which I'm going to point to David, to help us clarify. The African market is blessed with a very strong working youth population. And, we cannot, and I'll say it with a very big emphasis, we cannot talk about, discuss, or even smell the word sustainability without talking about this demographic. Now, sustainability without this demographic was just playing. So now the question is, how can we leverage this demographic for sustainable SME growth? Now, remember, you give us a catchphrase, social license. How can that tie together into building an African market with this vibrant population that we have to create a very strong, sustainable business in our community? Thank you.
So linking to what just said, for me, it's the African country, but also from a worldwide perspective. The young generation, and in particular in Africa, is having like today access to more education, to more knowledge of what's going on from a global perspective. And is the young generation that is recognizing the problem of E&S, let's put it this way, like governance is more that aspect of business relation. But if we have to be down the ground from an environmental and social perspective, are the young generation with technology, with AI, with all the new system that can be implemented and bring sustainability across lines, no? And I believe it's a great opportunity for young people to look out there and to scream their voice. I mean, it's time to be heard from corporate and also from medium enterprise that are already scaled up in the market, to get the idea of this young generation and actually implement it and actually bring them alive into the market. So, I mean, for me, it all lies on the fact that I want to see this world in 10 years, and I'm sure will be much better from an environmental and social perspective because of the young generation coming into game. I have a really positivistic way to look at the young generation and to sustainability.
Great. Janine, survival, social license. What's your social license? How do you put social license context to this big, vibrant youth population that we have? You see them day to day. You just mentioned your work you're doing at the university. Now, tell us, how can we bring this vibrant youth population into the sustainable, to grow our SME growth, to be the pillar of the small businesses? Thank you.
Yeah, I like what Mercy had to say, that the youth or startups in general, companies in general, are very well aware of the social aspect. And, I have to tell you, there's almost no startup that I work with who doesn't bring in the social aspect. They are living in communities, seeing the struggles within their communities, seeing the fact that certainly, across the continent, jobs, they can't count on jobs. They've got to make their own way. There's an incredible awareness of that. There's an incredible awareness of giving back to their communities. And I feel part of my job is to steer them away from trying to only do impact, and that it's not sustainable without the business element of it. Grants and funding is not the route. You need to add value to something that somebody wants to purchase it from you. So, I think there's already a strong awareness of that, and I've got to bring them in and understand that business and the sustainability of business is their way through. And there certainly is an element that is well aware of the environmental change. I can give you an example. I've had startups, using insects as a means for nutrition, and there's obviously the agri-tech community is pretty strong. But I do think that there needs to be more work on what the UN Sustainability and Development Goals are about and why it's important overall. I definitely think that aspects of it they are intimately aware just because of the nature within which they live in, the communities they live in. But I like the fact that private enterprise through the funding is now starting to make them aware. The VCs are becoming way more, they're starting to put out, this is my mandate and this is what I'm doing.
Okay.
Certainly from an international point of view, international funding point of view, there's a very strong emphasis on that. It's through the governance of their own countries and where they need to spend their money.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we do need to do more education on that.
All right. So we do need to do more education. Now, Mercy, you have a bunch of portfolio companies that you work with. You've been a champion of impact investing across Africa. Now, job creation, SMEs go hand in hand. Now, we have most often when you hear investors talk about African markets, which I still find very, very vague. You hear them saying that there's no expats. We don't have enough work. We have huge market of youths. We have universities within our borders. We have graduates, that have graduated from college. Now, how do you see their integration into the businesses, and how have that been, like we said, we can't discuss sustainability without this demographic. Now, how do we now plot, just to react to this question of youth population, growth of SMEs, developing a workforce that you and I can enjoy and see that succession in which David has mentioned, and creating more entrepreneurs, in which Janine is trying to do. Social license. What's your license in social markets in your portfolio company?
Yeah, first of all, I would start by saying, Temidayo, if an investor says that there's no good workforce or educated workforce in Africa, then I would say that investor is in the wrong place, so they don't understand the continent. There is a vast young population, as you've mentioned, as Janine has mentioned, ready to work. I think, to answer your question briefly, quick, because Janine has already talked a lot on that, and David as well, is the first thing is awareness. I think in general, the young population, to say, it's not just a straight collar traditional job. There are these emerging SMEs that are doing pretty well, SMEs and startups. I mean, we're hearing acquisitions left, right, and center, mergers and acquisitions on the continent, OPay, Paystack, Jumia, all these big companies, and they are viable employers, so that could be a route, especially a route to a young population that I see that has emerged, where we don't want to be doing the same old job in corporate. We want our lives to have meaning and purpose. We want to be engaged in something with purpose. And so I think raising that awareness to say you don't need to go the extreme corporate route. There are options for employment in SMEs, and SMEs are doing fantastic jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's also now on the SME side I will say the engine of that SME is also your people. That's a very important part. And how you think around strategizing and how to retain that talent, to attract that talent, you attract the young population, and how to retain it. So those are the kind of two sides to the coin that I would speak about. Lots of viable options for employment in SMEs, and also SMEs thinking about, how do I attract this young population that wants to do something, that wants to be part of something big, changing the African landscape and narrative, and how do I keep them retained? And that's also very important for business strategy as well, and sustainability, keeping those people within your organization. So those are the two types that I would speak to.
Fantastic. Now, how do you keep them engaged? SMEs, how do you get talents? Now, the question is, so attracting talents is one of the few things SMEs should do. But in trying to attract talent, that incurs some more capital, and the small businesses don't have access to this capital to attract these talents that we're all talking about. Now, this population needs to get paid, and needs to get paid living wages, and these SMEs are trying to get their balance. So for you, Mercy, my next question is, how can we define sustainable capital? Now, how can we define sustainable capital, and how important is it to build sustainable businesses in Africa? Now, the question, then the follow-on to that question is, what are the challenges and in getting access to this capital? And are they local or are they foreign?
Wow, quite a mouthful. Hope I remember. But please remind me if I miss something. So it comes down to my definition, which is simply, not complicating it. Sustainable capital is one that recognizes profit and purpose, And if you want to get technical, it's investment made into a company with the intention of generating a positive and measurable positive and or environmental impact alongside the financial gain. So I think that it's extremely important. I think everybody has chimed in to say how sustainability is extremely important. I think it's extremely important thinking, and it encourages, when it comes to sustainable capital, it encourages thinking around sustainability for businesses. Because, if you're engaging with a responsible investor or an investor that has sustainability as part of their DNA, you won't access the capital if you don't start talking their language. If you don't start demonstrating or showing them that you are a business that also is focused on sustainability and impacting the environment or people in some way or the other. So the capital definitely influences entrepreneurs on the continent, African entrepreneurs, to think around sustainability and to start to think around how to integrate it into their business models if they're not already doing it. A lot of the funding is foreign capital. A lot of the sustainable capital right now is foreign, at least from the perspective, of an investor explicitly describing themselves as a responsible investor with ESG as part of their DNA. Although I do think that, again, when it comes to all businesses on the continent, I do think in one way or another, an African business is impactful, even if you don't describe yourself as a sustainable business. So it is foreign. A lot of it is foreign. A lot of the capital, it doesn't have to be sustainable capital. A lot of the capital coming to Africa is foreign. I think now, recent in the last couple of years, there's a lot of move towards catalyzing local capital to support businesses. You see, even from the seed earlier stage, you see a lot of angel investor associations coming up, a lot of local VCs, but majority of it comes offshore. And when it comes to some of the challenges of accessing this capital, some of the known challenges are around, there's a phrase that comes in regularly, being investor ready, this startup being rejected based on the fact that you're not investor ready. There was a whole debate, I remember, on what does it exactly mean to be investor ready? What does it mean, ready to receive capital for that particular investor? So that's, one of the big challenges to receiving that capital. Another one of the challenges that is not spoken up a lot in formal circles, some brave ones do speak about it, is the fact that if the capital is foreign, there are some biases in accessing that capital. There's some biases in African local founders accessing that capital if it's, foreign led, and I'm not going to go into the nitty gritties of that, but I'm sure entrepreneurs in the audience know that. And it's a very controversial topic. So I think if I've answered or hit on all the points.
Yes, you did. You did some softies there in regards to the challenges we face in accessing capital. You want to build sustainable practices, is very expensive. You're looking for foreign capital. It's there's a lot of bias in that regards. Now, my play is, if you're talking about, if we don't look inward as an African market for the word defined sustainability, and the first, and if we look at data on who have funded businesses across different markets in many years from that have been funding the African growth, are mostly developmental funds and some foreign capitals. Now, the biggest spender in every market is the government. The government has always been the biggest, but it's budgets in, budget out every now and then. Now, are we looking inward for capital? Are we going elsewhere? The challenges we face, the sustainable practice that we need to start doing is when we start investing in our own businesses. Now, we have a lot of corporations in the African market. Are they doing enough to promote more sustainability within the markets? Are they investing enough? Now we've seen a lot, AT&T, T-Mobile, Amazon. They are big champions of promoting incubators, venture. They are actually one of the biggest pockets because they are leveraging this SMEs and this talent within their own market to build more and more expansion. Now, are the Econets, are the MTNs, are the Olens, and are the GT Banks doing more of that? So I'm going to pass to David and say, look, in your markets, are we seeing more of these corporates going into more venture capital investing, creating more local access to capital? Now, are we seeing that? Are we seeing the Shells and the Chevrons and all the likes of them creating access to capital, using more of their retained earnings to build an ecosystem for expansion for themselves? And that is one aspect of sustainability and sustainable practices. What are you seeing in your markets? You're muted.
Yeah. So here it's a super interesting flow of information coming from Merci and then to you, Temidayo. And I believe here in the Gulf region, Dubai, Abu Dhabi in particular, the geopolitical situation, it's quite different. It's also from a capital perspective. So we're seeing in the investment field in particular, we're seeing two different aspects right now. There is a governmental effort to push for sustainability. So you can look the UAE vision, the Saudi vision, the Oman vision. So all of them have some particular aspect of sustainability. Then there is a huge ecosystem of investment firms, venture capital, PE, private debt. Lots of them have international investors. So here is where the conversation of Merci also comes up in the Gulf region. There is a push also from the international investors. So we have this governmental pressure and the international investor. But at the same time, a lot of capital is still sitting in the traditional investor pocket. And I believe that's where in this area of market, we need to push more. So trying to leverage the understanding of what sustainability means and how impact investing, ESG investing, responsible investing, all this terminology at the end of the day comes up to creating value, creating a shared value, but then still having a return on investment. Because if we manage to explain to traditional investors those aspects, it might be a bit less. Okay, still today we need to be realistic. It might be a bit less than the traditional return on investment. But at the same time, in the medium term, not anymore in the long term, the return on investment will be more. And that's where the sustainable capital, I think, is coming in the region. And we're seeing these also with some clients, partners that I work hand in hand. We're seeing this pressure from a bit of vibrant governmental regulation coming up. And then at the same time, international investors are pressuring to start embedding ESG aspect into the investment decision making. So it's interesting to be there in the middle and see where we're going there. Okay. I touched on the conversation because what was, as Merci said before, was a lot of information, and then maybe I got lost in.
No, you did very well, and I'm gonna I'll pass it on to Janine in regards to what are the challenges you face in accessing capital to do the work you're doing for the entrepreneurs in the market that you operate in.
Well, I just want to comment quickly on something David said there. So basically, I think maybe what we're not saying eloquently enough is that just as we know within gender diversity within a startup brings better bottom line results, so the same is with funding. Intentional funding that has got slightly different agendas or combined agendas. I think brings a better bottom line and the sustainability. In terms of the challenges facing startups, it's always a case that, there's not, although the money is coming in fast and furious, it's nice, but there's still not enough money within Africa to allow for failure. And we all know it takes 2 or 3 failures to get to a really growing, scalable business. If you take a look at research around the world and other emerging markets, all you need is one really scalable business to make a difference and to start making employment in a region. You don't need multiple. I mean, obviously, we need multiple small businesses because out of that comes that one that really goes for growth. But yeah, very often, we have been dependent on many international funders, but I think that it's very clear now that this seesaw is balancing out to international and local funding. Certainly in the South African context, when corporates have to put a bit of money back into the communities and its governance, I think that's brilliant. I think local money is still looking very conservative with the funding, and that's really difficult for the startups who are looking for angel investing. And we can go there, right? In fact, regarding what Mercy had to say about something, I wanted to just comment that Friday last week, I was actually talking to a London-based VC who's actually from the Ukraine, putting money into the Ukraine. He had he's got a foot in the Ukraine and a foot in London. But he found it was better for him to be out of the Ukraine to put money into the Ukraine. They were more willing to accept his money and his expertise, et cetera, being perceived as a London-based VC. So, I think those are things that we've got to be aware of. And something that we haven't touched on is about, the startups are very quick to exit to a corporate they want to buy out. And I think that we need to be encouraging, companies to have the kind of family value companies that are looking to bring a legacy to their own dynasties, for want of another word, in order to have that stability of businesses that bring different values to corporate that's just profit driven. And trying to have as less employees as possible, and rather just addressing the bottom line. So I think those are the kinds of businesses we need to also be encouraging to stay long term.
Yes, I agree with you on the fact that we need to start creating a mindset of where we are not actively looking to go for an IPO or trying to look for a lot of strategic buyouts, particularly in a market where you don't have that bigger market of IPO listing, or you see Jumia going to the US to the New York Stock Exchange, and you're actively trying to aspire to go there. The methodology and the idea that I've always tell businesses that we advise at the foundation and at the capital is very simple. Be a local champion, and keep your customers for as long as you can. Many businesses we see in developed countries have the same customers. They're small, they're mom and pop businesses within each different communities that have had the same businesses, the same customers, the same friends for the last 20-25 years. They've passed on to different multiple generations, and when they decide to go public or they want to be, those are the ones that you hear the word. There's a private equity that says that do buyouts. What are they buying out? They're buying out owners that have been in business for 100 years. So there won't be a PE strategy that is doing buyouts if there's nothing to buy out. So the question for founders and SMEs is build a business that you'll be attractive to, that will be attractive to people that will come and say, listen, let me retire you. Rather than you trying to, do so much, ignoring the fundamentals of your business. Now, I'm going to point a question to Janine quickly as we go through this conversation, but I want to really, indulge our audiences that have been listening to us. There's so much stuff to talk about when it comes to the word sustainability, and we will do justice to a few of them. But if you have questions, comments, something you would like to ask, like the audience, you like the panelists to talk about, please, send up questions to us, and we'll do our best to answer them. Now, as we go by, the next thing is you mentioned something about corporates. Now, I'm going to say, we know the role access to capital plays in sustainability. Now, we've been talking about capital for a few minutes now. Now, we've been heavily dependent, like you've mentioned, on foreign governments and foreign developmental agencies to build our communities. Now, perhaps it is time for us to look inward and start to reinvest in amongst ourselves. Now, including the idea of sending our children to school in the West rather than sending them to schools within the African markets. Janine, thoughts?
Yeah, that's really loaded, that, isn't it? So I think the first thing is that we're seeing more and more, as we're seeing exits of entrepreneurs themselves from Africa, decent, good exits, we're seeing these individuals putting money back into their communities. I mean, I know I deal with a couple of angels that are sitting in, they've left the country, not the country, the continent. They're sitting in London, Silicon Valley, but they are exclusively investing in Africa, which I absolutely love. So I think that will happen naturally as the ecosystem matures. I love it. And definitely, certainly in the South African context where we see corporates are having to put money, profits back into communities, we're seeing that happen. I love it. And I think it is happening naturally as the ecosystem is maturing and these, these other businesses that are scaling is really putting an emphasis on that. The Paddock brothers, I mean, there's so many to talk about with Get Smarter. And in terms of sending our children out, yeah, that's a very loaded question, but I like the interflow of ideas, whether it's the West, the East, North, wherever it is. And I do believe I look to someone who's succeeded on a personal basis, and I take and learn from their successes and their failures, and I try and implement what I can. And certainly on a financial basis, there's been a lot of success in the West, and I think, yes, it's great to learn from that. And absolutely, my kids went for a few years and studied in the US. Obviously, I want them doing business in Africa and growing the African space. And I think this is where the opportunity is. But I think, picking and choosing what you can get from the West is also where the money is. So obviously the natural growth is going to be into the West. You spoke about Jumia. And, if they can use that money to grow within Africa as well, I think that's really important. But it goes down to the purpose of the money. Obviously, the Black sector in Africa needs sustainable finance, and that is being addressed. Professional and private money is being invested for commercial reasons and therefore sustainable as it puts the money back in the pot. Development money is a value spend and has a government mindset of working. I think it's got its place. And I think what we're doing here is growing ecosystems. I think it's all got its place. Sustainability is about long-term support. Obviously, development money is not about long-term and about seeing to the here and now. So there are different short-term agendas with that. And going back to the schooling, I love the interchange of ideas, but obviously Western principles are not going to work exclusively in an African market. The markets are not the same. The thinking, the values are different. Our ways of getting there and keeping the money is different. And I think we have to be aware that we know of how many corporates that have come into Africa and have failed because they're not dealing with the same way of doing business. It's very community driven.
So you've mentioned a few points that that I would want to reemphasize. Access to capital, the terms and the time to build sustainable businesses, and the time deployed and the time this capital are being sent to us. So let's take a very simple playbook. How long will it take you to raise a private equity fund in Africa, relatively to the US or to Asia or to Europe? Now we're talking about foreign capital and their work. So if you look at how long it's going to take to you to raise a fund, to raise a VC as cheap as $25 million or $10 million. Now, if it takes an African man 4 years to raise a fund, then where's the sustainable practice there? Now, if it takes, how long will those businesses last? And that's why the question is it time for us to start looking inward? Because, we're going to the West, it takes us 4 years to raise a fund. And the life of a fund is about 5-6 years. So when are you actually, and if you go into a fund manager, if you go into a VC to anyone within the West and you're like 28, 29 years old, they think, it's well experienced to really be a fund manager. Now, how long does it really take you? Look, the narrative and the questions and what we're trying to define ourselves as sustainable practices within ourselves really means that it's a time for us to start looking inward. Now, the answers are right in front of you. Can you please tell me a new fund in the African market that actually raised their fund and have the first close within 2 years? The DFIs will say they are investing in small businesses, they are investing in SMEs. There's so many political statements out there. Now, that's the reason for that question. Is it time for us to look inward? Now, or are they patient enough for COVID? We just went through a huge COVID stage. How many of them actually backing this equity fund to really, really survive through that stage? Now, that's the question. Is it time for us to start looking inward and start reinvesting in our own businesses rather than waiting for somebody in DC, waiting for somebody in London, waiting for somebody in Cologne, waiting for somebody in Paris to come to our aid? So that's the question for you all. And audiences, you could pound us on this and let us clear up the reality in front of us. When we don't start reinvesting in our own businesses, when we don't start reinvesting and waiting for somebody to come in and rescue it from the West, it will not come. Why? It will take 4 or 5 years, and that businesses that you think you can survive, that short-term small capital will dry up. And so the question primarily is, and I want every one of us within the audience to answer that question: is it time for us to start looking inward? And what will it take for us to start trusting in one another to reinvest in ourselves? Now, I'm going to go quickly to the next question, which I'm going to send to David, which is about business plays a huge role in shaping our society. Now, the way we think, act, and interact. Messi has spoken a lot about ESG, and we're still trying to define the E and how that plays within our context. CSR. ESG or CSR is therefore a critical tool to sustainable society, which means we need to see more from the MNETs, not just the Big Brother African contest and the Big Brother African, competitions. MNET has done so much. We've seen a lot of them trying to build up tech engineers within the market. So, trying to build more tech engineers to really service their servers. MTN has become a big employer of labor. So many of them. Now, who is a better influencer to small businesses or larger corporation? How can we use either one of them, the ESGs or the CSRs, to build an ESG community? Or, I'm going to actually change the word corporate social responsibility to community social responsibility. So now I think I went up and about. I'll take the question again. I said the businesses plays a huge role in shaping our society. The way we think, the way we act, and the way we interact. ESG or CSR is therefore a critical tool to sustainable society. Who is a better influencer, the SMEs or the larger corporation? Now, who is the better influencer to create social, environmental, and governance, or corporate or community social responsibility or corporate social responsibility? Is it the small businesses or the corporations?
Temidayo, let me try in 1 minute to clarify this. I don't like the differentiation between CSR, ESG. I believe right now we need to speak about ESG. We need to speak about sustainability. We need to speak about creating shared value. The corporate social responsibility, it's something that we bring from the past as a sort of like philanthropic feelings, just giving back to the community a bit of money, and then whatever they do with this money is not my issue. I'm not having any. Right now, that's not the case. Right now, I want to see the old name CSR department of the corporate investing on the ground in Africa, in their community, trying to support SMEs to have that back an impact for themselves. So that's how I think we create like a real impact and a real like ecosystem of corporate helping SMEs, and last but not least, regulators, a government that tells the corporate that's how you need to do it. Because like there is a need of these three actors, okay? Corporate, SMEs, so the youth, the young generation bring up with ideas, the corporate supporting them, and then at the same time being under the spectrum of the regulators, saying, okay, it's the time for Africa to thrive with the money that are made in Africa. So that's I think where we need to connect. So I don't really think some can have an impact more than the other, or can bring sustainability higher than the other.
Okay.
I know it's something that might sound a little bit too generalistic, but it needs to be together. It needs to be something brought up together. That's my view, and that's something that we are seeing also here. We're seeing a lot of large corporates in the UAE, in Saudi, that are trying to implement like seeding system or startup or scale up. There is a lot of discussion going on to support scale up more than startup, because as we were mentioning before, like there is a huge ecosystem. Everyone wants to be a startup, but then like you need to scale up this business to actually have a bigger impact, right? You cannot have like all a small one. So all together, I believe we can keep the capital where it is and try to make a stronger impact in the medium long term.
Thank you. Messi, what are the challenges we face in implementing ESG in Africa? Now that we're focusing on ESG, what are the challenges we face? Should we wait till we get to scale up, or should we start from the ground up? And how do we do that?
Yeah. I think it's capacity. I've worked with entrepreneurs, small businesses, startups, SMEs that are champions. They already have it within their mission, you know, as part of their DNA. As Janine talked previously, it's a way of life. I think you can't operate as a business in Africa. The social aspect and social mission is a way of life. So for me, briefly, it's about the capacity. You know, these young businesses, especially the businesses that I worked with, were young. You know, seed, Series A, very young businesses, and they have overhead costs. The most immediate concern is growing the business, again, because there's no sustainability, there's no impact without the financial side. So the immediate focus is on, and all resources are going on to business operations and trying to get that off the ground. And so I think the biggest challenge and where the opportunities are for ESOs, entrepreneur support organizations, and investors is to support these champions who are already doing the work, build those internal systems, you know, support them, build those internal systems. And there's some investors who are pretty hands-on about doing that. When they come in as an investor, a startup, when SME is not where it should be, you know, wise, you know, with those systems, because of, you know, very, very, very lean resources, but they don't just throw the money, they work with that particular SME to help build in that capacity, to help build in those systems, to continue to create that awareness and build it internally. And I think it's an ecosystem approach. And I think that's where the challenge is. It's about realistically and practically, how can we grow sustainability within a business without crippling the business? And that is through that support within the ecosystem. As Deneen said earlier, each actor has its place. So
thank you.
Yeah.
So each actor has its place. There's a capacity needs to be built. We've had a lot from our panelists. We've had a lot, you know, it's like I said, this topic can go on and on for days. You know, to sustain a business can go on and on for days. The challenges that we face is humongous among us. But like I said, charity begins at home. We have to be the champion of our own growth. We have to be the champion of our own sustainability. We have to be the champion of our own society. We have to look inward and build our own economy. You know, as we wrap up for today's episode, you know, please, you know, if you have questions that we haven't answered, send us to us. We'll be glad to answer those questions for you. What are we, you know, our panelists, you know, they are, you know, their names are there. You could follow them on LinkedIn, on their social media platforms. And, you know, if you have special questions for them, throw it to them, and, you know, they'll be glad to walk you through it. And can we do a one last seconds? My wrap up is very simple. It is Africa for Africa by Africa. Sustainability starts with you. It doesn't start with me. It starts, you know, in my own corner. It starts with me. When you look out of your window, what you see is as a result of your engagement or your disengagement. It's as simple as that. That is my own definition of sustainability. Thank you for your time today. My name is Temidayo. Thank you, Mercy. Thank you, David. Thank you, Janine. And we will see you in the next episode. Do have a wonderful day. And bye-bye, everyone.